Hey y'all, welcome to Book Marketing Mania. I'm Kim, a book marketing strategist for Christian authors, and I'm so thrilled you're here to learn how to grow your author platform, market your book on podcast, and steward your message in a way that honors God and your time. So last week, we talked with Shelley Hitz about how to audit your book marketing strategies so you can determine what's working best for you and your readers. And now you need to find the time on your calendars to work on those strategies you're prioritizing. So this week, I'm so thrilled to have my friend Lissa Figgins on the show. I met Lissa in a mastermind last fall and discovered her Redeem Her Time podcast. Lissa is a time management coach, and her passion is equipping busy Christian women with strategies and systems to invest their time wisely. And I've learned so much from her and her show, and I can't wait for you to hear from her too. So Lissa's going to teach us how to do a time audit. It's not as painful as you think. She's going to share 3 questions to ask as you look at how you're spending your time. And she's going to share 3 ways to own your time when marketing your books. You're in for a treat today, so let's get to it. Hey, Lissa, welcome to Book Marketing Mania. I'm so thrilled you're here to serve our listeners today.
Oh my goodness, I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much, Kim.
Y'all heard me gush about Lissa in the introduction, and I just would love for her to share passion for helping you redeem your time, which of course is the name of her podcast, Redeem Her Time. And I've heard from so many of you, which Lissa also knows because we were met in a recent mastermind for our podcast. So now that we've kind of transitioned into talking a lot more about finding time to market your books and how to market your books without it taking all your time. Just know that Lissa's been right alongside me as I've been kind of figuring that out for y'all. So I'm so thrilled to have her here. We're just going to jump right into it, Lissa. And I want you to answer, first off, let's talk about why do you think women struggle so much with managing their time?
I think so often we want to jump right to our calendars. Right?
Yes.
We want to jump right to, okay, tell me what to do with my calendar, with my planner, with my online calendar, whatever you're using. And yet I really think that it's really an issue of the heart.
Yeah.
Right. So we talk about, like, when I hear women say, I don't have enough time, essentially what we're saying is I'm too busy for fill in the blank. Right. And there's so many things that get put in that blank, and things that are really important in our lives. We're saying, I'm too busy for, this thing. And so I think the first thing is that the realization, we all have the same 24 hours in a day. You don't get any more, right? I could be the genie in a magic bottle and say, I'm going to grant you your wish and you get an extra hour or 2 in your day, but I can't. And here's the thing too, is you look around, especially as I think about your audience, right? They've already written a book, or they're in the process of writing it, and now they're marketing it. And they feel like they don't have time. But when you look around, there are plenty of successful authors out there, right, who've already marketed their books. So really, I don't have enough time is just an excuse. So I want to start there, because I think that heart is because the heart can get in the way if we don't fix that first, right? And as Christians, being able to look at our time as a gift from the Lord. And like you always talk about in your podcast, like He's given you a message to share with others. And yet we only have so much time to do it. Yeah, I don't know about you, but when I know I have a limited amount of time, I want to be really intentional about how I live it, right?
Yeah.
And being really careful about other things I'm giving it away to. Because oftentimes we underestimate how much time we give away to less important things.
Yeah, that's so true. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And that we do want to honor Him with that gift He's given us of time. And just, I love that you talked about how we all have the same amount of time, but, we are using it very differently, and maybe not using it in the ways we want to be using it in. But, we're just always looking for more time, or I know, like we said, just how to market our books without it taking all of our time, which comes down to, how much time we're giving to the marketing aspect of it, because writing also is so important to our audience, as you know. I just so appreciate how you kind of talked about the struggle, because I think we're all dealing with that right now, right?
It is. And we walk around with this extra appendage, AKA our phone, that is constantly ringing and pinging and just like tapping us on the shoulder, all day long, trying to get our attention. And then we wonder why we don't feel like we have any time. So that is something to really be thinking about is what place does your phone have in your day and in your heart?
Liz, I was just going to say, I don't know if you've wrapped it up yet, but you have done an amazing series on your podcast all about how our phones and how we use our phones and the good and bad of our phones and when it comes into redeeming our time.
Yeah, we just wrapped it up right before Easter. So we did it over the Lent season. And you're right. Like we looked at how can we use it well? Not let's throw it out the window or flush it down the toilet, because we live in a world now where we have to have a phone, right? And I'm thinking of your authors. They do need to be in social media. They do need to be connected with people. They do need to be using technology, but in the right way. And really, as believers, our time is something we're stewarding for eternity.
Yeah,
right? Because
so true.
what we have on earth is temporary, right? And so we want to make sure we have that eternal perspective, which I think is really, really, important.
So, Lissa, for all of our listeners going, I just don't have enough time to market my books, what is the number one way you recommend for them to find more time in their schedules?
Do a time audit. Wah.
Yeah.
But really, here's what I found in my own life and from working with women for over 25 years in a lot of different capacities. We can't change something that we don't know.
Yeah, so true.
So yeah, like right now it's tax season, right? So we're going through our finances, especially if you have a business, you're going through stuff in there, you're going through your household things, and the last thing you want to hear from the IRS is you're getting audited. That's like, no.
Yes.
And yet, I just looked this up before we hopped on. So let me just wake up my phone really fast. Here's the definition of an audit: an official inspection of an individual's or organization's accounts, typically by an independent body. And then I love this second definition: a systematic review of a corporation or an organization. And I was like, why are we running away from it?
Right.
Like, especially when it comes to your time. And the same thing is true with your money, right? And sometimes it's easier about the money side of things because it's more tangible than time. So think about your money. If you are not keeping track of where it's going and when it's coming in, you're probably going to always feel like you never have enough, because it's going out a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit, oh yeah, oh, I need this, like all over the place. And the same thing happens with our time, right? A little bit of it goes to social media. A little bit of it goes to wiping down the dogs after they come in from the spring weather outside, which I'm dealing with.
Yes, 5 times today already.
Right? I know, right? Like all these little things, and they're not always bad things. If I'm binging Netflix instead of working on my book, probably not the best choice. But sometimes, like my morning has honestly been a lot of different people just needing different things, and there was a timestamp on there. And so, we have a lot of places that our time is going all over. And so that first step is really knowing where it's going, because otherwise we can't use it wisely. The passage that I've built to redeem her time around is Ephesians 5:16-17, which says, "Be careful then how you live," or look carefully, some versions say, "not as unwise, but as wise, redeeming the time," or some versions say, making the best use of it, because these are difficult days. Right? Like, listen to the intention in that verse. Look carefully, be wise, make the best use of it, because time is that resource we can't make more of and we can't get back. Money, you can make more money, right? You spend too much on Amazon, you buy too many books. I'm sure all your audience loves books, right? You can go make more money, so, and replace that, but you can't replace the time that was spent. And so that's why we have to invest it wisely.
Yes. Oh gosh. Yeah. I love that so much, because you're right. That's what we're trying to do by marketing our God-given message, right? And we want to honor him and honor our time both, like we talk about on the podcast a lot. So I think it's just so important. I love that you shared that verse. Thank you so much, Lissa. So talk to us. Well, first off, because I know this happens to me, and I'm not really great about auditing my time. So I'm here for what Lissa's bringing. What encouragement can you give our listeners for those that are like me, that are like, oh, I don't want to track my time, more for fear of what I'm going to discover when I look at it?
Ooh, that's a juicy one. Okay. First, I'm going to say one other objection I often hear is I don't have time to track my time.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I don't have time for all the other things, Lissa and Kim. You're already telling me to do all these, things to market my book. Why are you going to tell me to do one more thing, like audit my time? I don't have time for that. I'm here to say you don't have time not to, because if you continue just letting it go to wherever the wind blows, you're going to keep wasting it or losing it and not be able to redeem it and not be able to have control over where it's going. So you do have time to do it. And it is simple. Like literally it can be this simple. Have a piece of paper next to you and keep track of every 30-minute time block and how you spend it. Like, it does not have to be hard. I recommend doing it for an entire week, because you know how life goes, right?
Yes.
Monday, maybe you've got a great plan for the week. Tuesday, life happens and, plans kind of went out the window. Wednesday, you get back on track. Thursday, there's a flow to our week. And I think that's part of it too, is that, we need to look at how things are flowing. It's kind of also too like a food diary. So if you've ever kept a food diary, right? You write
Yes.
down everything you eat for a certain period of time. But do you notice what happens? You think twice before you take that bite because you have to write it down. So
Yes.
just that awareness starts removing mindless eating. And the same thing is true with your time. If I have to write down that I just spent the last half hour, scrolling, social media, not related to marketing my book, I don't really like that. Maybe I'm going to choose to do something differently with that time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you're doing an audit, there's one rule: no judgment. Like no shame, no stories. You are literally that independent body, like that definition said. You're just reporting the facts. Because then once you have the facts together, you can do something about it, which I think leads into what you just said. Okay, so what happens if you're like afraid of what of what you might see? So let me ask you a question. Which is scarier? The fear of knowing where your time is going and being able to change it, or not knowing and just keep going and possibly end up like somewhere you didn't necessarily want to be?
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, you want to know how it's working. It is just that initial, but I love that you're just saying like it's just the facts. And I just interviewed Shelly's conversation will go live before yours. So she was talking about auditing your marketing activities, and I love that this just kind of goes right into it because it's like, well, now you have to figure out where's your time, to do these things, and how have you been spending your time and how effective has that been on your marketing? So it's just so important. And she was just talking about how, we have to look at our numbers, but don't get caught up in all the mindset stuff that goes around that. It's just data, right? For us to look at and make sense of and make decisions based on it. So you mentioned about just using some paper. Is that what you recommend? Like, do you have any digital tools you suggest for the time audit?
Yes, for the time audit, great question. First of all, I like paper just because it's something that, like, if I see the paper, I'm remembering, whereas digital, I have to go open that tab or I have to remember, to go back there.
Yes.
I will say there is something about like being able to see your week at a glance. So if you do it digitally, use like a Google Calendar type thing where you can see the whole week at a glance. If you just write things linearly, and this is one of the reasons why I'm a proponent of paper planners, when you go through the like the calendar stuff on your phone and you're just seeing like one day after the next, your brain can't see how it all flows together and where the blocks are, and where the spaces are and things like that. Whereas when you can see a week at a glance, you're going to be able to see that. So you can just Google, 30-minute time tracker and you can find a free version. There's something about it being like on paper. And here's the thing, writing it is more of a connection with your brain than typing it. And that works, and I'm sure you run into this with authors, back in the day, I was thinking about this the other day, like how we would handwrite everything, right? Yeah. And you would carefully type it because you didn't have the options to go back in and change everything. But I was watching my daughter who's in college right now, and like, she never writes anything on paper. Right. And everything on the computer. And there is a little bit more of a disconnect between the brain and with what's going down in front of you. So I think for something like this, there's something about in my handwriting, I'm writing this down. In fact, I would say the same thing about setting goals and visions, right? There's something about you connecting those parts of your brain when you're writing it in your handwriting. So, I mean, if you, obviously you can do digital, but paper is simple. Yeah. And it, top of mind as well.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a good point. Well, I was just kind of visualizing as you were talking about seeing your week at a glance, because I think, and I know you probably have lots of episodes. I know I've heard you talk about this, Lissa, on your podcast, but you can kind of then start, and maybe we're going to talk about it here in a minute, actually, but you can start kind of visualizing these blocks of time, maybe where you're doing some of the similar tasks, whether they're good or bad, and then you can figure out how to take care of those is what I'm kind of envisioning. So let me ask you real quick though, like, what if you forget, you forget to track some time blocks of how you spent your time, you can't remember how you spent it. And then you're probably going to be like, either I got to give up on this because it's not working because I can't even remember to do it. Or is there a way you can maybe trigger yourself to remember at the 30-minute blocks to make sure you've jotted something down?
That's a great question. I'm a huge believer in time blocking and breaking up your time working on something into either 25 or 50-minute blocks with a 5 or 10-minute break in between. So that would be a great time. And, it's called the Pomodoro method. There are apps out there that you can just use that. I just use my phone. I set a timer for 25 minutes. I work 25 minutes. The timer goes off. It, reminds me, hey, here's what time it is. And then that's that trigger. That could be that trigger for you to, let me just write down what I did for the last 25 minutes and go take my 5-minute break.
Okay. Great.
So that could be a great way, but I would also say I'm always a huge proponent of like, give yourself grace. Like, so say it gets to lunchtime and you're like, oh shoot, like I totally forgot to do this all morning. Okay. just do your best, right? You probably have a digital calendar of some sort that would show you if you had any appointments. You can look back and think, okay, what did I, what was I working on, this morning? So don't overthink it. Don't beat yourself up. That's not the point. Like you said earlier, it's just numbers. Don't attach any meaning to what's on the paper yet. Once you can see like a whole week, ideally, if you can't do a whole week, you can do a few days at a time. Like that's fine, right? But once you can see, now you can start asking those questions. Like, what do I notice? Oh, I noticed that I always get interrupted around this time of day and I don't finish this. Oh, I noticed that I, feel like I need a nap and maybe that's not the best time to be writing, or, like start noticing some different things. And then, then you can start asking the questions about what can I change? What can I do with this?
Yeah. So let's walk through those then. So like after we do our time audit, so we have it on our paper, then what would be the next step? So go through some of those questions that you would encourage women to ask themselves to really evaluate how they're spending their time.
Sure. And one thing I'll just say tied into the phone challenge that you mentioned earlier is in that time block, if you were doing stuff with your phone that was not directly related to whatever you were focusing on, for that time block, just put a little P there so that you can start paying attention to how often am I picking up my phone, because it literally takes the brain 20 minutes to fully get back focused on whatever it was you were doing. Even if you think I'm just this, really fast. So
let me ask you, Lissa, to talk about that for just a few minutes. Can you just share maybe some of the research you've done or just facts you know about when you do, stop a task to get interrupted by something else and then get back to it, how long that really takes?
Yeah, it is crazy. So statistics studies show that it's about 20 minutes to get fully back and focused. And the longer you take with that distraction, the longer it's going to take in your mind to go back. And the more, impactful that distraction is, right? If it's just a quick, someone sent a smiley face, you're probably just going to smile and then going to be able to come back quicker. So 20 minutes is obviously an average. But if this was like something that, really threw you off, or something that, just like you can't get out of your heart and mind, it's going to take a little bit longer. And, I just think that so often we just think, oh, it's no big deal. I'm just going to check this real fast. I'm just going to check it real fast. So I try to just have the rule of, usually I don't even have my phone with me when I'm in focused time block, because most things in life can wait 25 minutes.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Sometimes like this morning, I was using my notes on my phone to work on something on my computer. And so I saw a message come in from my daughter, and she's in college, and I know that she's not always at a place where she can message me. So I chose to respond back to her and then just went right back to what I was doing. Right. Yeah. So, so there are ways to manage it. The other thing I would say too, and this is fascinating. Listen to this, Kim. They have found that just having your phone in the room, even if it's turned off, still distracts your brain. Obviously not as much as looking at it, but you think, oh, it's off. I'm not, but there's this subconscious thing about what am I missing out on? What do I need to catch up on? Whatever is going on that, device that is still in our brain. And then now that's competing. And really, we can't multitask. I think we think, especially as women, we think I can multitask. I can switch back and forth from one task to the next really. And yet it's really just the key to inefficiency is to try and do all the things and think we can do them all well. So
yeah, that's so true. And as they get older, it gets worse. I used to get multitask a lot better than I could now. But I think that's so good because I remember hearing about like putting your phone away. And my excuse always was like, it might be the kids' school calling, so I just gave them a separate ringtone. So if it rang, I knew it was school, but I could put it in another room and still hear it ring, but everything else was turned off, everything's off, but that notification was going to ring through. If for some reason, the school nurse was calling, I think it would be so good, like what you were saying to, the P for pay attention, because I'm thinking like with my audience, like, you might have your times you're thinking you're going to sit down and work on your book marketing, right? And then you're going to track that time, but also just kind of be cognizant of those interruptions that do come up. Or, if you're like, oh gosh, I'm just stuck on whatever I'm doing, I'm going to go to social media. And even though sometimes we think that's part of book marketing, we can get a lot of time wasted on there that doesn't have anything to do with book marketing, but also just to keep a track of those things that, you might be doing more than you thought you were doing in that block of time because it just took more things than you thought So I think that's just, I mean, I'm preaching to myself to really just take a better care of tracking, exactly what you are doing in those time blocks. Okay. So what do we notice? We kind of have started noticing some things about our time audit that we're doing. What would you do next, Lissa? What would you say to look at next?
So the next thing I see, because again, still what do you notice could really be very objective. And
Uh-huh.
so the number two is, how does it feel to see that?
Oh, yeah.
Right now, you're starting to attach some emotion to it. And here's where we still have to be careful, because we can self-sabotage. We can, get all down on ourselves, and then that doesn't serve anyone.
Yeah.
But, I have to say emotions are just like a red flag, right? So if I'm feeling, like disappointed about something I'm noticing, or if I'm feeling discouraged, or if I'm feeling overwhelmed, or whatever it is, like just notice that feeling. And let that be a sign that, okay, that means that maybe I need to change something, which is the last question. So what do you want to change or improve? Right? Because if you have a negative feeling associated with it, okay, great. But just let that feeling move you to taking action in some way, versus I'm going to stay stuck in the fact that I feel bad about where my time is going.
That's a great way. Yeah. And when you think about what do you want to change or improve, just, go back to the goals you're trying to reach, with reaching new readers and marketing your books, and just, staying true to those and honoring God in your time as well.
It's so easy to find the negative, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
When you do your time audit, look for what's working well. What do I notice I am rocking at? What do I notice is like really flowing and feels amazing? And so maybe in that case, either you're going to maintain that because it's already like in a really great place, or you're like, how could I take this up to like one more notch? Like, how could I even make this better? Right? So I think we tend to often, in so many things, we find the negative, but I'm going to challenge you, look for the positive as well.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. I love that too. And so I know that you were going to mention too, what's, like really looking at your time audit, you've gone through these 3 questions of, what do you notice? How does it feel? When you see it, what do you most want to change or improve, or add on to, like Lissa said, you can just add on to the things that are going well. And then I know you also wanted to ask Lissa, is that right? Like, what's the next best thing I can do with my time?
Yeah, we've evaluated it. And sometimes maybe, it could be easy to just get stuck in where our time is not going, and that's not going to serve anybody, right?
Yes.
So what's the next best thing I can do with my time? What would be most important right now? Right. And so now you can look in front of you, like, okay, what are all the things that I could do? Well, let's see, I could hop on social media. I could go write an email. I could, see what other authors are doing. I could create a really great, image in Canva. I could send a bunch of random messages, but I know that, you teach your people to getting on podcasts, right? So if you're in that place and you're like, okay, yeah, I haven't liked where my time is going, don't stay there. Just be like, okay, so what's the next best thing that I can do with my time that's going to move me forward? And then focus on, that one thing first, before you let any of the little things kind of seep in.
Oh, yeah, that's so good. So once you've identified what the next best thing is, so like if someone did say, okay, the next strategy I'm going to really focus some time on is, pitching myself to be a guest on podcast. And so I need to set aside some time to do that. What are some steps you would recommend to then take what next steps can we take to make sure that happens on our calendar?
Yeah. Well, after you do your time audit, what I recommend doing next is building what I call a time template, where you're kind of mapping out ideally what you want your week to look like. Now, that being said, there is no such thing as a perfect week that executes at 100%, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have, put some intention into what that could look like, because you will execute way more of it if you've got a plan than if you just kind of leave everything to chance. And the first thing I always tell people to do, and this always catches them off guard, and that is to block your off time. When you're not working on your book, when you're not being productive, with something related to that. Because if you are not, rested and refreshed and refilled, you could sit down in front of your computer. I'm sure your authors run into this all the time, right? You're sitting down to write and it's just like, you have nothing.
Yeah.
So if you're not refilled, if you're not filled up, you can't pour out. So I'm a big proponent of put boundaries around when you are going to work and when you're not going to be working, because otherwise those lines get blurred and then nothing really, your best work is not getting done. So that would be the first time. And then when you look at your time that you are going to be working on it, now you're going to go, okay, what matters most? Because like we just listed off, there are a lot of things you could do, But I love the one thing question from the book by Gary Keller. Have you read that book?
Yes. Have it on my bookshelf.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So he's Keller, as in Keller Williams Realty, obviously knows what he's doing. He's been very successful. So when successful people say something, I listen in, and I can summarize the entire book in one sentence. What's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will become easier or unnecessary? Right? What's the one thing I can do? Because there are 100 things you could do. And sometimes what we do is we start with the easiest one, or the one that feels the best to us, or the one that's the easiest box to check for my checklisters out there. But then we can end up wasting a bunch of time doing things that really didn't move the needle very much at all. Right? Instead, he's a big proponent of start with the one thing first. And then for your audience, I listen to your podcast all the time. Get yourself on podcasts, right? We should be pitching so that we can have conversations about our book on someone else's podcast. So that should be the first thing I'm doing when I sit down to market my book. And then with whatever time is left, I could, put something up on social media and do some interacting there. Then I could send some messages. Then I could create that Canva. Then I could, so it's putting it in the right order of what really matters. Because what if, like you said, life happens and all of a sudden I'm not able to get to that full hour that I had planned? Well, gosh, if I started with the most thing and got that checked off first, really everything else doesn't really matter. And what if that first one made everything else unnecessary? And then the third step, and we kind of talked about this a little bit with the phone, but really like making the rule of, if I have set time to work on this, and even when you've set time not to, there can always be exceptions to the rule. But if you're like me, I was the mom who would be sitting there with my laptop during family movie night. This is great, guys. I'm here plunking away an email or, creating something or whatever. And then I wasn't really connecting with them. I wasn't really like disconnecting myself from work and things like that. So on your off time, okay, this is what I'm focused on. I'm focused on whatever this thing is that I'm doing. But on your on time, this is what I'm doing as well. I'm just focusing on this one thing. And here's where Mama Bear comes out, right? Because everybody else has their own priorities. They want to insert them into your list, right? I had to tell someone today, okay, do you need this today? If not, I can take care of this later on. And they were very willing to say that, but I had to put boundaries and say, I've got some things scheduled today. So would it be okay if I work on this later? I think the one thing that is often surprising is we have to protect ourselves from ourselves.
Yeah, that's so true. Oh my gosh.
Sometimes we're the ones that get in the way, right?
That's so true. Because I mean, just like you talk about picking up your phone and you're just kind of like, I'm just going to do some mindless scrolling because I'll need a little mental break. And it's like, well, no, that's not what you're supposed to be doing right now. You had a priority, stick to it. So speaking of that, do you have any tips for getting back on track when we do let other distractions take a priority on our time?
Yeah. I mean, the sooner you can notice, the better, right? The less time that you've gotten off track, the easier it is to get back. And then you just ask yourself the one thing question, right? Or the next thing question we said, what's the next thing I could do? And not wasting time beating yourself up or making a big deal out of it. Just, okay, this is what I said I was going to do during this time period. So what can I do right now? And, and then, we can kind of get ourselves back on track. And hopefully if you've already created a time template, you've got something that you can look at visibly that's going to tell you, here's what you're doing at this time. And you're not having to make that decision in the moment. But it's almost like you take the emotion out of the decision making because you made that decision when you make that plan. And I find that makes it a whole lot easier to go back and go, oh, okay, let me just see what it was I said I was going to do.
Yeah, that's so great. And how often do you recommend we do a time audit, Lissa?
I recommend doing at least one a year because things change over time, right? Kids grow up. And so your role as a mom might change, or, what you're doing exactly in your business or as an author might be changing or whatever. So at least once a year, ideally, I would say once a quarter. Because again, in each season, it's really good to say okay, where has my time been going? And then you have in mind, here are my top priorities for this next 90 days or 12 weeks or whatever that is that's in front of you. And so now I can be intentional about saying, okay, so this is this is how I want to craft it because I'm keeping these specific priorities in mind for this season that I'm in.
Especially like with summer coming up, everybody gets busy with kids home and you're still trying to figure out, well, how am I going to get these book marketing activities done? So I think that would be super helpful.
Yes. And I was going to say, like, this would be a really great time for someone to do that, especially if they have kids that are going to be more in the picture. So anytime you have a transition, right? So whether it's, a school year end, or whether it's, a new something that you've taken on or let go of, or a move, or, a big change in a relationship or something like that could be a good time to say, you know what, let me just kind of check in with where I've been at and see, are there any tweaks I want to make? Is there anything that I want to shift around? Am I truly fitting my priorities in, knowing that, I've had some transition going on and I'm kind of heading into a little bit different season, even if the calendar doesn't say it's a new season.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. Because we don't always see that on our calendar, but mentally we'll see it and know that change is coming, and we need to be able to adjust to it with how we're spending our time.
I've got two quick. One of them is called the 2-minute rule. Like, I think sometimes we overthink something. I would always do this. Oh my gosh, it's going to take so much time. I don't have time for that right now. Just do it for 2 minutes. And here's what you find. Usually if you do it for 2 minutes, it wasn't as hard as you thought it was. And very often that 2 minutes turns into 5, turns into 7, turns into 10, turns into 15, right? And then you got it done. And now it's off your list and you have to think about it. So, sometimes it's just like, yeah, maybe I don't feel like I have 2 hours to give to something, but what could I give it 2 minutes? And sometimes I do 2 minutes and I just have to be okay with that 2 minutes and move on to whatever is next. But I did something and it got the ball moving, even if it was just a little bit. So that's what I call the 2-minute rule. The other 2 rule that I use is called the 2-day rule. So say, for example, that you've said, I'm going to spend an hour on book marketing, Monday through Friday, and you miss it on Monday because whatever happened doesn't matter. Then you just have the unwritten rule in your head. I don't let it be 2 days in a row, right? So that means I'm for sure going to make sure it happens on Tuesday, because here's what happens. It doesn't take that much more to get back to it after missing 1 day. But once you've missed 2 days on something, it definitely is a lot more effort to get back to where you wanted it to be. So give yourself grace. No big deal. Didn't get to that today. So I'm going to not let it be 2 in a row. And that's really saved me from a lot of getting way too far off track and getting so far away that, it's a lot more work to get back.
And I know you have a podcast episode on that, because I remember listening and I loved it about the 2-minute, 2-day rules. And that is so helpful just to kind of put in our brains and remember as we kind of try to tackle things that are on our list. Oh gosh, Lissa. So I know just your heart for our time and how we spend it the best we can on our priorities, and why you're called the priorities protector, which I love so much. Hey, but will you tell our listeners before we go, I would love for them just to have an opportunity to hear about your podcast and what you have to offer for women that are interested in managing their time better.
Yes. So I, like you said earlier, have a podcast called Redeem Her Time. And specifically, it's for busy Christian women. And the whole idea behind it is that we want to be more present, because God has given us a mission, a ministry, a message, whatever it is. And we only have the time that we have to do that. And so we want to be intentional with how we're, redeeming our time. So the podcast is a great place to start, because we talk about, like I said, the heart behind it, as well as the tangible tips that can be applied directly to our calendars and things like that. The Redeem Her Phone Time series would be a great one to binge if you're wanting just to make sure that your phone time use is moving you in the direction that you want to go, and in light of eternity. And like I mentioned earlier, I do offer a schedule shaping strategy session where I help you do the time audit and process it. So you're not doing that by yourself, because it's easy to let ourselves off the hook, right? Or be too hard on ourselves and not really do anything with it, right? And then what we do is together, I teach you some strategies to create your time template and what your ideal week would look like. And then you get my support over the next couple of weeks, because you're going to test it and tweak it, right? And put it in real life and go, Melissa, this didn't work at all. I can't do this. I thought this was going to, be the greatest thing, and it's not. And how can I adjust it? Sometimes we just can't see it ourselves. So yeah, if anyone's interested in that, it's just redeemhertime.com/session.
Great. That's awesome. I will definitely put those links in the show notes. Well, Lissa, thank you for your time today and helping us redeem our time and making sure that we have enough time to market our books, but that we're always honoring God at the same time with the time that He's given us. So I so appreciate you being our guest today.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share with your authors. I can't wait for the world to get to hear all about their books. And I'm just going to say, if you're listening to Kim and you've got Kim and God on your side, it's going to happen a whole lot faster than you think. So keep doing the thing and do what she tells you.
Thank you. Isn't Lissa the best? Be sure to check out her Redeem Her Time podcast and book a session with her to make sure you're spending your time on what matters most when it comes to marketing your Christian book. And if you found this episode helpful, I'd be so grateful if you took a screenshot and shared it with a friend. And as always, I'll be there for you next week to help you market your book one podcast at a time. See you then.